Are modern shonen actually good? Things like Demon Slayer, things like Jujutsu Kaisen, Hell's Paradise, My Hero Academia, and Chainsaw Man, like the modern generation of action shonen, specifically action shonen, not romance shonen and all. The biggest shows in the world, the action shonen, that is what we are going to be focusing on. And are these shows actually any good? At the start, let's just say, coming off the rip, I think these shows are good. They're fine. They're good. I would rank them like a 7 out of 10, which is a perfectly good, watchable, standard show, and there is nothing wrong with liking them or watching them or anything like that. Off rip, they are good shows, okay? But let's actually talk about why I rate them that low, according to some people, or why I'd rank them that high. There are many things with modern shonen that I kind of have a gripe with, and majority of it has to do with the simplicity of it and also kind of the dumbing down of the show. I guess it is for the demographic, because for those of you who don't know, shonen is a demographic, not a genre, and that demographic is like young teen boys, shoujo being young teen girls, and seinen being for the adults, like over 18. I think that's the cutoff range. But yeah, so for that age range, they kind of dumb down the shows a little bit, but I believe that in modern era, they dumb it down a lot. Like, take a look for Demon Slayer, for example. It is a super goofy show, and it gets kind of bad because of how many dumb jokes they show in and how many, like, bruh moments and stuff like that. Like, at the start, it was fine. A few is okay. Some of them are funny, but they just kind of overuse the Tanjiro bruh face. It's this face right here. They overuse that, and it's nothing terrible about the show, and that's not why I would rank it like a 7 out of 10. But it is one of the things that kind of de-elevate the show. Now, comparing them to older shonen, again, like, I'm not like some boomer here. I started watching anime in like 2015, and I started, of course, with the big three and everything like that, but I'm not some boomer who only likes older stuff. I love me some new anime. But then again, there is a big problem with this modern stuff, and it stems into people believe anime are good as long as there is good enough animation and good fight scenes, because at the end of the day, that is what battle shonen fans want, and that is what they get. And they will elevate the hell out of a show just if the fights are cool and the animation is there to back it up. For like the biggest proprietor of this would be Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer. Their fight scenes look incredible. Don't get me wrong, Mappa and Ufotable absolutely kill all of the animation, and it looks gorgeous. The choreography is fantastic, the animation is great, colors, all that. It's great. But at the end of the day, there is nothing backing those fights up. If you look at Jujutsu Kaisen, you think about it. What pops into your head, aside from Gojo, okay? You think, season 1, you think of one fight. You think of Yuji and Todo, I think his name is, versus the plant guy. And then in season 2, you think of Gojo heavy breathing, and you think of like the Sukuna Maharagura fight. That's all you really think of. What narrative plot points come to mind when you think of that? Personally, when I think of things like Hunter x Hunter, which is a fantastic, like 9 out of 10 shonen action shonen, I think of narrative plot points and whole arcs that are fantastic because of what they do for the characters that they introduce and everything. Like the Chimera Ant arc. I believe it dragged on too long, but when I think about it, I think of Meruem and how great of a character is and how he develops. I think of how Gon changes. I don't necessarily think about individual fights, which, I mean, there are some amazing ones and they do come to mind, but they aren't the only thing I remember about the show. And that's just talking about plot. They are both kind of nothing burgers in terms of plot. Demon Slayer is the most simple plot ever, and there's nothing wrong with a simple plot, but it's not, you can't really say it's a 10 out of 10 because it is so simple. He's fighting demons, gets a little bit stronger, and is going to finally defeat the big bad guy. I mean, Dragon Ball Z has a more complicated plot than Demon Slayer. And if you look at Jujutsu Kaisen, the plot is a bit better. It's a bit more developed with some character development sprinkled in with a few good power system attributes. Like the Demon Slayer power system is nothing. It's just swords with flashy colors that don't actually exist, which kind of ruined my immersion. But then when you look at Jujutsu Kaisen, the power system is a bit more developed, which kind of adds to it. But at the end of the day, it's a very lackluster story. And moving on from story, we have characters. I mean, characters in modern shonen are kind of bland. At least main character-wise. Like back in the day, when you look at main characters, you look at the big three. You look at Ichigo, Naruto, you look at Luffy. they are very memorable characters. I don't believe Tanjiro and Yuji. Yuji especially is a memorable character. Denji is pretty memorable. Midoriya is memorable, but for wrong reasons, mostly just being a crybaby. And Hell's Paradise, a lot of people forget about, which is a big crime, but that's a video for another day. But Yuji in particular is a super forgettable main character, in my opinion, that he doesn't really do much in the show. Sure, he fights with Toto in season 1, but then season 2, he really takes a backseat. And the author just kind of pushes Gojo onto you. And it's no wonder that Gojo is like the biggest thing in that show, because the author kind of pushes him to you even though he's not necessarily the main character. And I saw a terrible take saying that Yuji's not actually the main character and Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't have a set main character, but it 100% does. But yeah, Yuji is just like a super bland character. He doesn't develop at all. He takes a backseat in season 2. Realistically, all he did was do some running. He fought the bloodbending guy, and then Sukuna just took over for like half the season, and then he came back in the end, like doing a little bit of fighting. But other than that, it's kind of underwhelming. He fought Mahiko, which is a cool fight, but I even forgot that fight happened because it took such a backseat to everything else. In the moment, it was a sick fight, but other than that, it's just kind of forgettable. And that is the core root of the problem with all these modern shonen, is they're just good fight scenes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love me a good fight scene. I am talking all this shit about Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, but I was excited and hyped for every single episode to come out. Don't get me wrong. But you also got to look at it in a grand scheme of things. Like, if these shows are getting accepted as 10 out of 10 masterpieces, then what does that show for the future of anime and what types of shows are going to come out? If the authors and animation studios and everything think these are the animes that are 10 out of 10, they're going to start pushing more anime like this because it'll make them more money. And at the end of the day, anime is a business which is about making money. But yeah, that is the main problem. They are just fight corn. Okay, it's all corn. And I hate censoring myself like that, but starting off on YouTube here, I can't be too safe. But these fights look incredible. They look amazing, like I said at the start of the video, but at the end of the day, they add really not a lot to the story. I mean, of course they push the narrative forward and everything, but they aren't, and they shouldn't be taken as the anime being good just because there's a few good fight scenes in it. Demon Slayer, nothing really happens. It's just each season they find a new demon, and then there's a cool fight scene at the end, and that's about it. Jujutsu Kaisen has a bit more in it, but again, majority comes down to just cool fight scenes. Chainsaw Man was just cool animations with cool fight scenes. I mean, there was Mami Makima, which, I mean, hey, that does give it a bit of an edge. And Hell's Paradise, I believe, does have like one of the more interesting plot lines, but I feel like it was too rushed. And something like My Hero Academia, again, had so much potential, especially in season 1. The power system was cool, the characters were cool at the start, but then they focused way too much on the school aspect, and they focused way too much on the side characters and kind of being super inclusive because, hey, we're gonna go fight the strongest villain of all time, but don't worry, bald head guy is totally gonna do something. Like, yeah, we're gonna fight as a team and everything, but at the end of the day, there's 3 characters in My Hero Academia who can actually do something: Todoroki, Bakugo, and Deku. All the other characters are kind of useless, but then they force them to be useful, which really brings down the show. And that's kind of why I rate My Hero Academia a little bit higher than the other ones, because it does have some type of plot and development, and the fighting sometimes takes a backseat, which is perfectly okay. It's perfectly fine for a show not to have insane fight scenes every episode. Like, look at Vinland Saga. So many people rated Vinland Saga Season 2 as worse than Season 1. I rate it just as good. It's just a completely different type of show, but that doesn't make it worse because there's no fight scenes, which there is some fight scenes, and the fight scenes are the hypest thing ever. Thorfinn versus Snake. A bit off topic, but like, hello, that's an insane fight. But again, a show doesn't need to have these insane fights for it to be good. And again, I'm going in a circle here, I'm rambling. At the end of the day, what I'm saying is, are modern shonen good? And yes, they are, but they also aren't. Okay, I think it's a bad practice to get into where we are just highly ranking these battle shonen as like 10 out of 10s and not actually taking a step back to look at it and be like, what is this A gonna do to the industry and everything, especially if we're just only pushing these shows? And B, is this truly what we want? At the end of the day, it is just Chinese cartoons that we're just getting entertainment from. But like, eventually you're going to want more as an anime fan, as long as you're not just like a super casual watcher who just watches the biggest show ever. But like if you become some type of anime fan, you're going to eventually want more. That action is going to dry up and you're going to look for something more. But the more we push these shows, the less we're going to get of the other stuff. It's kind of like the whole isekai craze, where the more we wanted isekai, the more they're giving us isekai. And trust me, I am the isekai master. I love me a good trashy isekai, but that's all we get these days. All we get are garbage isekais, and it's really running its course and really starting to dry up. So at the end of the day, these shows are perfectly fine. They're perfectly acceptable, but do I really think that they're 10 out of 10 shows? No. Do I think they're completely watchable? Yes. Will I continue to watch all of them? 100%, because I like anime and these are anime. They're super fun to watch, and at the end of the day, that is all that matters. But sometimes you just got to think a bit more critically about some anime, and maybe sometimes you got to just challenge your own thoughts about a show, because that's how you grow as a person, and I believe that's also kind of how you grow as an anime fan. As cringe as that is, you got to challenge what you think is good, and you got to challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone, watch something different, because you'll learn to love what you find.